Good evening, I'm William Pace. Thanks so much for tuning us in tonight. You know, I've been very concerned about many of the people in Dayton, and not only in Dayton, but in our country. This pandemic that we're in right now has been the most challenging thing for people to deal with. And tonight we're going to be talking about some ways to cope in this very difficult time. And my guest this evening is Scott Hall. He's a psychologist. Thank you so much for coming on the program tonight and for being here. You know, we had the first pandemic in 1918, and that was horrendous. And then we had the Great Depression in the 30s, okay? People had time to recover from the pandemic to the Great Depression. Now, we're in what is perceived to be something very comparable to the Great Depression and a pandemic on top of it. And to be truthful, in the last 2 decades here in Montgomery County, we've had a number of challenges, and we still have people still grappling and reeling from the tornadoes, lest we forget that. So many people are really having a challenge just coping day to day. I know I am. It has forever changed the way we do things.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, so many things are different now. And I think one of the reasons why so many people are disobeying the governors and people who are trying to protect people and protect their health is because people aren't used to being confined.
Right.
You see, that has been an adjustment for people, but it is what we must do to protect our health and the lives of other people. Yeah. And so I wanted to talk about some tips, some ideas on how we can cope with this.
Yeah. Well, thanks, William. I appreciate you inviting me on today, and just to hear you kind of take inventory of the different things that our community's experienced over the years. That really speaks to the magnitude of how people are struggling with things now. Because when we think of the pandemic, it's a chronic trauma. It's a chronic event. It's not a flashpoint that happens once and we get back on our feet, we pull together. There is a constant, ongoing influx of new messages of what's happening, new events, new struggles, and then that dovetails with, you know, the race relations and the financial crisis. And it throws people into a tailspin. It shakes up the predictability of what they've known, and it creates this new normal that no one really wants. And it leaves a lot of questions.
Yes, questions.
Yeah.
And people are grappling and just trying to figure it out. And I think people are struggling with being confined.
Yes.
And what do they do? What are some of the ways people can they're feeling anxiety, they're feeling, how can they reduce what they're feeling? Many people are really on overload, stressed to the max.
Well, they are. And we know that tension seeks resolution, and uncertainty or not knowing creates anxiety more than anything. And that's what we're seeing. And so, good point. How do people harness that anxiety and try to level out their experience a little bit? And there's a number of things. One is that we truly want to feel safe. Okay, when we don't feel safe, in other words, we can't go through our regular routines, then there's anxiety. So one of the first steps is to ask ourselves, what does it look like when we feel safe? Is it going back to some routines? Is it connecting with certain friends and family? Is it participating in interests that maybe we've gotten away from because of everything that's happened? So we need to look for those moments where we feel grounded and safe. The other is to be connected. And you brought up that idea of isolation. And in some ways, we're being told to isolate, and we need to do that so we can get back on track, but then it creates another kind of problem.
And I'm concerned about that other kind of problem, because we're told to practice social distancing.
We are.
And when we're practicing social distancing, then we're not able to be in the presence of other people. And I'm concerned, what are the long-term problems that can come? Being isolated, can it make you withdraw into yourself, and then in the future you become very handicapped, in trying to become emotionally close to people?
Well, it can. It can have that, what we call accordion effect. So if I'm isolated, if I'm a very personable individual, and I isolate because I need to, and then I self-isolate, that can lead into feelings of despair or depression, potentially. And how do I get out of that? Well, we want to reconnect. So part of what we're talking about is redefining what it means to connect.
With people.
With the environment, because it's not just with our horizontal relationships, with our vertical relationship, with our environment. So there's other opportunities to reconnect that we want to build into our world.
That's great to hear you say that. And when we come back, we're going to be talking about some ways that we can connect with people in the midst of this pandemic. Stay with us.
You'll have the time of your life. I saw a man, he danced with his wife.
Hi, I'm William Pace. Thanks so much for tuning us in tonight. Before we went to break, we were talking about how to cope in the midst of the pandemic and how to stay. We're told to practice social distancing, but how can we be connected with other people while we're practicing this social distancing? And let's talk about some ideas, some ways that people can do that. I guess Zoom is a possibility. People,
Absolutely.
For me, is picking up the phone, talking to people. Just many ways that people can be connected with other people and have a sense of not being isolated, even though they're practicing social distancing.
Yeah. And I think that the social distance, anytime we're connecting with people in person, we're going to have that social distance element. You're right, Zoom is a platform. All of these face-to-face platforms have exploded because we can see and talk with loved ones across the country. Even if we're in a house next door, we can do that. People are writing letters. They're trying to reconnect old school. And
I see that.
Yeah.
I see that. I wonder if this pandemic, or being in the midst of this, that there are maybe blessings, benefits that will come out of it, even though it's been an adjustment.
Sure. And one of the things that I've noticed also, that when we talk about connecting with other people, I've been seeing, especially over the summer and fall months, people getting outdoors more. So they're passing one another. So they're connecting with the environment, but they're also creating a relationship with other people in a different way, which is enlightening, and it's very helpful. One of the things that we're noticing is that research shows that when people are outdoors for 20 minutes, whether they want to be or not, it has an upward spiral effect. It's a curative factor to that.
Big time. And for me it is, the vitamin, and we also, being in Ohio, many people suffer from vitamin D deficiency.
Yes.
And I'm one of them.
Yeah.
And I make sure that, every time I get a chance I'm going to soak up the sun, because I can tell immediately a difference in my outlook.
Yes.
When the sun hits you, it's medicine, good medicine.
Good for you.
Good medicine. So that would be, I guess, a possible way for people, just if they feel like they're in the house, just
Yes.
go outdoors.
Absolutely. To break up the pattern, the predictability of being in this holding pattern. Because when people are in a holding pattern and they feel like things aren't changing, that creates tension and anxiety goes up. Okay, so we want to break the predictability of what we feel like we're forced into. The other thing you mentioned that I think is really important is how are we in the best self? How are we in the best place to connect with other people? And one is that we help others by helping ourselves.
Yes.
We forget that. And one of the ways is self-care, without feeling guilty or selfish about it. And that's diet, exercise, and getting good sleep. The other is practicing avoiding harm, not just to ourselves, but to others. And what I mean by that is limiting our media intake on some of the despair that we hear about.
Yes,
You
absolutely. And I've had to do that. I've had to, because, you know, and when this whole pandemic started, I was watching PBS news hour, the regular local news, the national news, and whatever other news I could read. And then finally I realized that I'm just going to have to stop this because I was becoming stressed out. So now what I've done, I want to be aware of what's going down, but I've cut it down about a fourth.
Good.
You know, just enough to know what's going on, and that's it for me.
And that's important. And to do that really lends to one of these other pieces that help us. It's to build hope. It's looking for these micro moments when things are going right and accepting the non-permanence of all of this transition, that it won't last forever. And that creates a little bit of hope for us.
And I think if people, for me, is worshiping a higher power than myself, than this world, and this too shall pass. You see, and that God is bigger than this. You see, and so whatever it is that you believe in, your source of belief and faith and hope, wherever you draw that from, this is the time to count on that more than ever. To see you through, and that's what's keeping me, I think, glued together in the midst of this pandemic. Is the Word of God.
And
so whatever it is, if it's religion, if it's whatever it is, you know, that you practice, you know, take to that. You know, things that aren't going to harm you. I'm not talking about taking to some kind of substance abuse. But, you know, things that are faith building, health building, that takes you to a good place emotionally and mentally. That's what you want to do, those things that feed you.
Absolutely.
And give you a sense of well-being.
Yes. And so you're really talking about, to me, to hear that is a serenity prayer. You know, what do I need to let go of?
Absolutely.
But where do I need to channel my energy to really connect with my best self? And so it's a combination of both, of connecting but letting go and being okay with that. And not burden ourselves over things that we really can't control.
Can't do anything about. There's more to come on the William Pace Show. Stay with us.
They do things that they don't do on Broadway.
Good evening, I'm William Pace. Thanks so much for tuning us in tonight. We're back with the program, and we're talking with Scott Hall, a psychologist, and we're talking about how we can help people cope in the midst of this pandemic. And before we went to break, we were talking about coping skills and how to get involved in things that give you a sense of well-being. And that's, I think, really critical in these times when we're bombarded with so many things, the economy, et cetera, et cetera. You know, is to find out what feeds you. What is it that feeds you and make you feel good? and things that would put a smile on your face, or to say, those kind of things. No matter what there's always going to be something going down.
That's right.
You know, and we have to be focused upon the goal.
Yeah.
And I always say, stay focused, stay the course is one of the things I say.
Yes.
And stay the course, because there's always going to be something over here, a squabble, somebody got into it, something went down here or something.
Yeah.
And you just keep staying the focus. And so, but I know a lot of people are, as Mary J. Blige says, in the thick of it now.
They are.
And, like people who have lost family members, and they couldn't be in the room with them because they didn't want to be contagious or make the thing worse. And so they didn't even get a chance to say bye to their loved ones. And a lot of people are still struggling with a sense of closure.
That's right.
They're still mourning and maybe never got to mourn.
Yeah.
And so what can you say to those people?
Well, any type of ending that we don't expect, or things didn't end the way we would wanted them to have been, is very difficult. And grieving is something that never really ends. It's always with us because we always remember. At the same time, I was told once by a colleague at University of Dayton during a funeral of a close friend that people never really leave us as long as there's someone left to remember. And it had me thinking about that, and to really consider, what code did that person that meant so much to us live by? And I think of those character strengths and what I drew from that person. And the way that I honor that relationship is, how do I now practice and make decisions by that code in my own life? So the relationship just gets redefined. There's not as much of an ending to it as I might be experiencing, because I'm carrying on that memory and the knowledge of that individual.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I can affirm to that. And people who I have lost, have been in my life. There was a high school guidance counselor who sort of was like an aunt figure to me, and she's in heaven now. But I feel her all the time on my shoulder. I'll be driving down the road, and I can feel her putting her hands on my shoulder,
She's
and I
still
reach.
there.
Yeah. So these people, they're in heaven. You can't see them, but you can feel their presence. They're with you. And I have many people that thoughts will come in my mind. And so that's them saying, I'm here, I'm with you.
Yes.
Can you feel my presence, you see? So.
And there's some comfort to that.
For me,
Yes.
it really, and sometimes I get teary-eyed because I think about all the fun memories we had, and I put my hand on their shoulder because I feel their hands on my, it's always this side, and I always reach up and, I feel you, so. And lastly, I want to talk about, I know some people are just bombed out. And mainly because we were thrust in this pandemic.
We did not ask for it.
We did not have any warning.
Right.
It just, and we had to deal with it.
Yes.
And, but I know some people may need help dealing with it.
Absolutely.
And so if they're having thoughts of maybe suicide or harming themselves or trying to take to some kind of form of substance abuse, how can these people get help?
Well, and that's the most important question to end a conversation like this, I would agree. And that is, one, to recognize that they are struggling. We never can fully decide how life comes at us, but we do have a choice in what we do with that to some degree. And so I would say, to try to draw up the courage to recognize that you may be struggling, and reach out to a friend. If you're in a church, someone in the clergy or a Stephen minister. a licensed counselor, licensed professional that can help you navigate these difficulties. And of course, there's hotlines when people are really feeling despair and they need some immediate attention. The resources are there that will meet you more than halfway. That we just need to know that you yourself are acknowledging some difficulty. And if you're a friend of someone that's struggling, you want to have that on your radar. You want to reach out, try to connect with those loved ones in your life, just to ask how they're doing. That's very important. That can be a saving grace for someone during a day of despair.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the program tonight. Thanks again.
Thank you.
There's more to come on the William Pace Show. Stay with us.
While the storm clouds gather far across the seas, let us wed our allegiance to a land that's fair. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair, as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Far across the seas, let us swear allegiance to a land that's fair. Let us all be grateful for a land so fair, as we raise our voices in a solemn prayer. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, thy home, sweet home. God bless America, thy home.